I don't know if you saw this or not a couple days ago. And maybe this is a moot point now that Illinois had a 20-point win over Iowa, but it was so interesting. I wanted to come back to it once we got free on YouTube. So, first off, shout out to friend of the program, Stephen Bardo. He was on our NBA draft live show this summer. He's been in the Sleepers Discord for a little bit. I'm a huge fan of Bardo's. I think he's great at what he does. Basketball mind for sure that you should take seriously. Obviously, he's an Illini supporter, given that he played at Illinois and is as in tune with this program from watching it as anybody. He had a lot of thoughts on Illinois' loss to Duke and where this program is at. And it manifested in a long video on his own platform called Bardo's Breakdown. You can go find it. I encourage everybody to go support it. Where he just kind of lashes out against what is wrong with this team and what he sees and why this team sometimes comes across as if they don't care as much as old Illinois teams would. It was certainly an uninspired effort down the stretch of the Duke blowout loss. So I'm going to play a clip of this. Again, Rafael Davis posted like a 5-minute excerpt from this, and it's fantastic. Bardo has a much longer form discussion on it as well that everyone should go watch. But here's about 30 to 45 seconds of Stephen Bardo on why this Illinois team may struggle compared to past Illinois teams.
The reason you would see the Illinois teams in the 80s, the early 80s and the mid 80s and the late 80s, the reason you would see them not lose by 25 or 30 is because they cared. They grew up in the state. It meant something to us and to the guys that came before me to put this jersey on. It meant something. But if you're in Lithuania, if you're in Serbia, if you're in Louisville or Evansville, you ain't thinking about the Illini. You're not thinking about it.
I'm going to stop there. He goes on, but you get the gist of what he's trying to imply. This team is built around players that have come from places on the planet that just don't care about the institution that is Illinois basketball. You can read between the lines on who he's talking about, but Kasparis Yakashonis is here for lunch, and then he'll be in the NBA by dinner. Will Riley grew up in Canada, is here for a year. He'll be gone. Tom Ivicic, who knows how long he'll be here. You can take the same argument, and Bardo does. You can take the same argument and apply it to guys from the portal. How many guys from this team truly care about Illinois? Bardo even references Umar Ballo. He says you're seeing it with Indiana. Umar Ballo and Cannon Carlisle and Miles Rice have come into that program. They're not there because they care about Indiana. They're there for their paychecks. And when Mike Woodson got fired, decided he was out, guess what? He stopped playing those guys because he's not playing politics anymore. And Indiana has since played better basketball with guys that care, that want to be there. So it's a fascinating, compelling stance from Bardo, someone who clearly does care, someone that wore the jersey, and someone I think everyone should listen to when he speaks on this. Do you agree with his general sentiment that guys just not caring about Illinois enough is contributing to where this team is at?
I agree with the general sentiment. I think it's one of those situations where I'm not sure, like if I 100% agree or disagree. I think he's right, and I think there's a lot of gray area within it. I think he's correct in terms of what this like. People on this Illinois team don't care, the way that he does, or the way the fan base does, or the way that maybe even like a Merez Johnson who grew up in the area does. Um, but I don't think it's Kasparis, Big Tom, or like Will Riley's fault necessarily. I think you need guys like that on the roster that need to be supplemented, like a Ben Rickhouse. If you're going to bring in a guy that's NAIA transfer, do it the way Mark Pope did down in Kentucky. Bring in the guy that cares about the front of the jersey, right? But at the same time, just use Kentucky as a comparison. They're missing the Kasparis or the Will Riley. And that's why they're struggling, because they're missing some of that top end talent that can just go get you a bucket. So I think you kind of want to meet in the middle of like, hey, you can go get the top end talent, the Kasparis, who's phenomenal, one of the best players in the country, but they need to be supplemented with the guys that care about what's on the front of the jersey. When you go with 10 or 11 guys and the only one that like has that level of connection is a Merez Johnson, who's unfortunately injured at the moment. I think that's kind of the result you get at Illinois. But the only thing I would say is I wouldn't swing too far to the other side, because the other side is kind of what Kentucky has going on, and they also have some issues. Obviously, far less. They're a much better team than Illinois is, but it's not perfect on either end. I think you want to meet in the middle a little bit. That's what I think Coach K's like Duke did so well, where it's like, yeah, you have like a Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett, those type of players, but you also have supplemental guys like a Shire, who's a program guy for his whole life, right? Um, I don't often compliment Hubert, but Hubert in North Carolina, right? Like North Carolina, Duke, they have program guys forever and ever. I think you need a good mix of both. This Illinois team doesn't have that mix of both at the moment.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think you're making a good point, even comparing it to Kentucky. On that note, I would just say there's a lot of different ways to build good basketball teams. You can build good basketball teams built around entirely Europeans. You can build good college basketball teams built entirely around the portal. You can build good college basketball teams built entirely off high school recruiting. Purdue is a program that's doing that. They're saying, let's not portal, let's not go overseas. Let's build only with guys who care about Purdue, right? And I think Purdue fans would sit here after losing four straight in February and tell you that they're upset with the approach too. So,
Mhm.
Raphael was quoting this, and as a Purdue guy, that was noteworthy to me because, again, Purdue are probably the loudest people that are screaming what Bardo's saying here. It matters to care about your institution and not just be there to play basketball and leave. And at the same time, like, what is the difference between Purdue and Illinois? Purdue is 19-9 overall. Illinois is 18-11. Purdue is 17th on KenPom. Illinois is 22nd. Purdue has lost four straight and is now 11-6 in conference. Illinois has lost a bunch and is 10-8 in conference. It's not that much of a difference between the two wildly different approaches here, right? And I don't mean to make this about Purdue, but the point is this. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to build good basketball teams. To that point with Illinois here, let's go back a year. Illinois' best team under Brad Underwood, 14-6 in the Big Ten, 29-9, made the Elite Eight, won the Big Ten tournament, hung banners. Did Marcus Damas not care about Illinois? He was only there for 1 year. Did Quincy Guerrier not care about Illinois? He was only there for 1 year. Did Justin Harmon not care about Illinois? He was only there for 1 year. Did Terrence Shannon care about Illinois? He was there for 2 years. Like, what is the difference? Just guys from Lithuania? Like, the guy who's been the best player from Lithuania doesn't care? Now, I hear that point. I actually think it's a good one. I don't mean to act like I'm in conflict with Bardo here. Because I agree. You look at this year's Illinois team, I think just the level of pride that they take collectively as a unit in representing Illinois is an issue. I think there's a lot of individual agendas going on, but I don't think I would necessarily say it's directly because these guys grew up overseas. And if it is directly because guys grew up overseas, guess what? It's not going to change. Brad Underwood is doubling and tripling down right now saying, we have one of our assistants overseas every month. We are not going to stop. We're hosting Luigi Swigo. We're hosting Alexa Dimitrievich right now. So if Illinois fans are upset with the European impact on this program, I don't think it's going anywhere under Brad Underwood. You're going to kind of have to come to terms with that. And look, I agree with the general sentiment again. I've been harping since the offseason. Continuity matters. Let me give you some guys who do care about Illinois that could have helped this team care about Illinois with the Europeans. Luke Goody cares about Illinois. He could be there helping. Coleman Hawkins cares about Illinois. He could be there helping. Guess what? Ty Rodgers really cares about Illinois. He was asked to redshirt because he wasn't as talented as Trey White. There have been a lot of missteps in the way this program from year to year, go back 4 years, go back to Io and Kofi. Continuity has been deprioritized by Brad Underwood. He wants talent and a new team every year that does something completely different. These are the ramifications to that. You get caught up with teams that do have talent that just don't get it because they're learning on the fly here. And you've got to have some program guys that help you, and it leaves this program in a really weird spot. But I guess what I'm saying, to summarize, I love that Bardo's making this point. I think it's a great one. I don't think, to boil it down, it's just Europeans or even just transfers. Because as last year showed, you can build winning teams at Illinois centered around transfers. But you've got to do the right things, pull the right strings, get these guys to play cohesively as a unit and understand what it means to wear that Illinois uniform. They were able to do that with Terrence Shannon, who was really mature with all he went through last year, with Luke Goody, who had been there a bunch of years, with Coleman, who had been there for 3 years. They were able to get Damask to see it quickly because they had that core. This year's team doesn't have that core to teach a Kasparis Yakashonis or a Will Riley or a Tom Ivisic what this means.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like pointing the blame at Will Riley, Big Tom, and Kasparis is wrong in my opinion because like whether we want to admit it or not, freshmen win. Like if you have really really good freshmen, they win. Um, and we've seen it for decades now. It's not like a new thing. Like one and dones get the job done. Maybe not in the same light that like a team full of 50-year seniors that have been at a program forever would. But one and dones don't shy away from the moment in their own right. But you have to have something around them that like would allow them to feel that connection. I don't think Brad going away from the one and done route, whether that's a one and done from Lithuania, a one and done from California, or a one and done from Illinois, who cares where they're from? Getting the high level talent, but having supplemental stuff around them is what I think matters most. I mean, we talk about it with Mark Pope all the time. I'm very curious what he does once he has a lot of high level talent around him because he clearly can create that buy in from guys. Like that's what we've learned this year. What happens when you combine that with a buy in from a Jasper Johnson and a Caden Lewis? That's scary. He doesn't have the buy in from this team because he's missing some of the other stuff. But that's not Kasparis' fault. Kasparis, in my opinion, is one of one. If anything, going to Illinois hurt Kasparis more than Kasparis going to Illinois hurt Illinois. And that's the way I would look at it. If Kasparis got to play on another team that had a little bit more, not a little bit, any more shooting, any more shooting with the looks he creates for people, with the way he gets to the basket with ease, we might be talking about him in the same light we talk about Dylan Harper. But because of some of the stuff that is going like with this Illinois roster, we don't talk about Kasparis like that. So pointing the blame at him, someone who in my opinion, draft stock's been hurt by this roster, isn't fair to Kasparis. And the same goes for Will Riley, by the way. That was a guy that should have been a lotto pick. He's not even on draft boards at the moment.
He's on draft board. He's like the latest Bleacher one. Latest Bleacher one had him 20th.
Oh, my bad.
Not lottery for sure. He's his stock has been hurt for sure at Illinois this year. So to that point, last thing I would add here, more so than like where they came from, the portal or overseas or anything. To Bardo's point, this team seems like they have a care issue, a take pride in what you do on the court issue. That certainly showed in Duke in the second half. Bardo even went so far as to say, hey, if this shit happened to my team, like if Duke put in a walk-on up 40 and he's hitting a three, splashing a three, talking shit on me, like I'd get ejected from the game. Bardo basically said that. And that's missing from this team for sure. There's no shit to them. Let's prevent this from happening. Why though? It's not just where they came from. Why would this team have an issue with caring? Let's go down the list of maybe why each individual player on this Illinois team might have an issue getting up and being confident and just caring to play for this team. Trey White, DNP coach's decisions for 2 weeks after giving you great basketball in December, seemingly for no reason. Will Riley didn't enter the starting lineup until yesterday. He's supposed to be a top 14 guy in the sport, talent-wise, and he was benched for Benham Rickhouse all season. Benham Rickhouse, would he struggle with care right now? Well, his confidence is shattered, and he's been in and out of the lineup because Brad doesn't trust him. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, constantly Brad saying, I need to play him, but not playing him. That seems like that's constantly going on. You get what I'm saying. Brad has mismanaged these guys to the point where, like, every single guy on this team is probably questioning what their role even is here. And look, I'm not implying that it's been an easy job because guys got to play. Brad clearly wanted Kylan Boswell and Benham Rickhouse to be stars on this team, and they weren't. But the fact that they weren't, and he stuck with them for too long, and other guys that were outperforming them were getting punished by some accounts, it has led to an effect where this team doesn't play all that hard because everyone has their own agenda that they're frustrated with. And by the way, to be clear, the guys you built around this roster, the tape was out on a lot of this. Okay? Like, by all accounts, DGL's been a great teammate. DGL swapped high schools 5 times before getting to Illinois and decommitted from Purdue. Trey White's been at 3 different schools in 3 years, all of them losing basketball teams. Any fan of the previous teams would tell you that Trey White is not a guy you want in your locker room. Kylan Boswell, Arizona fans were happy to see him go. Like, the tape was out when you picked these guys, hand selected them to put them together. And now you're like, they just don't care. Like, why don't they care? They don't care because this is who they are and because they've been mismanaged a little bit. And hopefully you can fix this going forward because, again, I agree with what Bardo is saying. I think it's the right point, but I don't know how you fix it if you're Brad Underwood going forward.
I also don't think you need to be from anywhere to care. Put me on Illinois right now. I also am getting a tech, and I have no connection to Illinois outside of this YouTube channel, but I also would have got a tech against Duke.
Probably a good point.